Parliamentary Updates.
Parliaments of the Caribbean held their second regional seminar in Port of Spain recently. Organized by the Inter-Parliamentary Union, delegates gathered under the theme Strengthening Parliamentary Action on the Sustainable Development Goals. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honourable Bridget Anisette George, addressed the audience at the opening ceremony. Madam Speaker brought into focus the general lackluster attitude when it came to climate change and its negative effects.
In today's world, we are undoubtedly experiencing rapidly increasing changes around us, both positive and negative. But my active reading and critical consumption of both domestic and international media has led me to conclude that when it comes to responses to negative changes, it appears that generally there's either a hands-off approach or at best a minimalist approach. It very often seems on the individual, institutional, and even national level, there is a pervasive attitude that if the current matter does not affect me directly, it is not a problem. Whether one attributes this attitude to the denial syndrome or to moving through life with blinkers on and consequently ignoring the obvious, or to simply the capitalist motive of profit over environment, or even profit over everything, including our very existence, this attitude appears to have become the norm. It appears that the lone wolf phenomena, which has been identified with acts of terrorism, may be modified to aptly describe many of our responses to worldwide issues which have the potential to threaten us all. My observations, if justified, are a serious indictment on humankind.
However, Madam Speaker was quick to point out that it was not a lost cause and that the input of parliamentarians can turn around fortunes in this area.
We are the ones empowered to ignite our citizens, our institutions, and our world interaction. In the context of this gathering, may I remind that our governments, as signatories to the Paris Accord, agreed to unite and pledged to leave no one behind. Our country is committed to fast-track progress for those furthest behind. Understanding the gravity of those commitments is the reason why the SDGs are designed to bring the world to several life-changing zeros, including zero poverty, zero hunger, zero AIDS, and discrimination against women and girls.
And speaking on behalf of the Inter-Parliamentary Union was Speaker of the Parliament of Guyana, the Honourable Barton Scotland. Speaker Scotland said the IPU was proud to have facilitated the link between parliamentarians and the United Nations regarding their contribution to the SDGs. He stressed the importance of the actions and decisions of legislators.
Parliamentarians are representatives of the people, and the SDGs are about people. Parliamentarians have an important advocacy mission in their communities. They are the bridge between the people and the government. Through their core functions, lawmaking, oversight, representation, and budget, they can translate the SDGs into enforceable domestic laws and regulations, hold the governments accountable for the goals they have subscribed to, ensure that adequate financial resources are allocated for the achievement of the SDGs, leaving no one behind, and ensure meaningful national ownership of the SDGs.
Deputy Chief of the Sub-Regional Headquarters for the Caribbean of the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, Mr. Dylan Allen, praised the organizers of the seminar. Mr. Allen said the engagement at the regional level allows for best practice and the successful implementation of Agenda 2030.
The Sustainable Development Goals have become integral to the development process of every nation. Since coming into effect in January 2016, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 goals have shaped a new paradigm of development thinking, from one of national approaches that are distinct from global efforts to one that integrates global aspirations for sustainable development in national development strategies. Let me point out that it has profoundly changed the development narrative from a focus purely on economic challenges to embrace the environmental and social in an organic fashion. Building resilience and addressing financing for development are also no less important.
Mr. Allen had some advice for the attendees.
Interestingly, evidence has shown that countries that are proactive in localizing the SDGs have recorded early success in their implementation. An essential first step in this process is to define a national institutional mechanism for SDG implementation. Such a mechanism will ensure that there is coordination in planning, implementation, and reporting and monitoring as it relates to the SDG.
And Ms. Randy Davis, resident representative for Trinidad and Tobago for the UNDP, brought the keynote address. Ms. Davis stressed the principle of inclusion and no one being left behind in striving towards Agenda 2030.
The new agenda really calls our attention to the need for us to focus on the achievement that all human beings can bring so that they live full lives in dignity and equality. And this focus on leaving no one behind is not just a core principle, but it requires actually conscientious efforts to ensure that the policies of tomorrow and the policies we adopt now really take into account those who are often forgotten or left behind. So with this crucial focus, there's no doubt that parliaments and parliamentarians have a central role to play in the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, if you look at the resolution signed by heads of state, it really acknowledges that parliaments play an essential role through the enactment of legislation, through the adoption of budgets, and through your role in ensuring accountability for effective implementation of these commitments.
Ms. Davis urged all participants to revolutionize their approach to implementing the SDGs in the national context.
The new development agenda requires a lot more from all of us. It requires a new way of thinking and working. It requires us to go beyond a very linear, what we call a siloed approach, which often at government level and in institutions is represented by line ministries, sectoral agencies, and in Parliament often in committee structures, which are then mirror government structures, to look at intersectionalities and often externalities that move beyond a short-term electoral cycle to long-term impacts, and this is a real challenge. It requires us to collaborate much more broadly across a range of actors in society, engaging private sector. It was interesting to hear about how we are trying to mobilize new funding and the launching of new bonds and swaps, engaging civil society, who are often already natural partners for parliamentarians. But it, as I said earlier, requires us to make more efforts to reach those who we often are not in the established networks of civil society that we have.
This seminar was a follow-up to the first held in Paramaribo, Suriname in 2018. Stay tuned for more parliamentary updates. For more information, visit our website at www.ttparliament.org and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.
Parliamentary updates.